everyone, and welcome to our week on quality assurance. I have Biljana Cuckovic with us today, and she is OISE's governance liaison. So this is an interesting week because quality assurance is not something that was part of the academy 200 years ago. It's something that has really grown as universities and colleges have become more important to what the state does. And especially when the state is funding it, we begin to say, what's happening there? And is this a quality enterprise? But of course, even the term quality has a lot of different definitions in the literature. You've read particular readings for today, but I've invited Biljana to try to give you some insight into what a large faculty like OISE actually does to make sure that their programs have a quality element to them and pass these quality reviews. So Biljana, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome, Grace. I'm really glad to be here and to share some of my expertise and insights around quality assurance in higher education and how it really works in practice. So happy to be here. In the answer to that question around what faculties like OISE do to ensure quality, we can really talk about two types of activities. So the first one is quality enhancement, which I think it can be ongoing. It's continuous. It is more or less formal or regulated. We'll see some examples of both. And then it's more internal and more sort of bottom-up driven, if you will. And the other type of activities is quality assurance, which is like a cyclical in that it happens every, say, sort of 7 to 8 years. And it's more kind of top-down initiated, and it's more prescribed and sort of policy regulated. And it has an internal component to it. So first, let's have a quick chat about the quality enhancement.
Sounds great.
Which is sort of important term, like in terms of, it's an important term in terms of reference for the reviews, which means like all of the departments and programs, they have to develop and implement various initiatives to continuously enhance the quality of programs and the related teaching and learning environment. So these activities they can be focused on sort of program, ensuring that the program, like on program changes and ensuring that these program changes, that the programs reflect the current state of the discipline or area of study, that the programs are appropriate in the structure and the curriculum and length and also mode of delivery, and that they include appropriate learning outcomes to help students really achieve the degree level expectations for that degree program. And of course, that there also these activities are aimed at ensuring that there is like innovation, that there's space for innovation, that there's creativity going on, and that there's opportunities for student learning beyond classroom and also for student research experiences. So there can be, these are all usually done through academic change activities, and they can be more formal, sort of more substantial, and they may require governance approval. Sort of it depends on the magnitude of these changes and whether they impact the program learning outcomes or not, and to what degree they impact program learning outcomes. So let's say if the more they impact the learning outcomes, the more substantial they are, and they require governance approval. And these changes, if they're not going to impact the learning outcomes as much, they don't necessarily require governance approval and can be accomplished within individual courses. For example, by introducing innovative teaching methods, by sort of innovative course content and learning materials and things like that. I also want to highlight here some sort of quality enhancement initiatives that are connected to resources, such as, for example, human resources, which is really about hiring faculty to teach in the programs, about developing programs and services in support of students, and modernizing spaces in classroom facilities, innovative instructional technology, things like that. All of those initiatives sort of are connected to resources. So all of these activities that I mentioned, they are ongoing, they are continuous, they happen on a continuous basis. So this is something that's underway all the time in programs. It's sort of driven from within the programs and the departments.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. But the quality assurance that we are talking about in this chat today, it's really, those activities are more cyclical. So they happen from time to time. Let's say usually every 8 years. These activities are sort of more formal, and they follow a prescribed methodology. They're based on a formal, approved, and transparent quality assurance policy that is comprehensive and includes all programs in a faculty, like graduate and undergraduate. And this policy also defines like elements of these program reviews and the program evaluation criteria. And there is a clear authority and responsibility for implementing this policy in a faculty. And this process is usually based on self-evaluation, as we will talk about that, and also peer review. And there's a sort of a fundal dimension to this process. Is this sort of there's an involvement of external disciplinary experts. So these are really these activities have external component, and there's sort of a public documentation to guide the whole process. And this the results and the outcomes of the quality assurance are made public. So
And
that's
who like does the government require the 8 years, or is that university's governing council? Who makes this 8-year rule that we have to review our programs?
It comes from under the sort of quality assurance frameworks that are established at a sort of government level, if you will, like
Government.
in Ontario, the level of the area of the province, and then also the universities have their own quality assurance processes that follow those general guidelines. So that's how this decision, the cyclical nature.
And how micro is it? Is it higher education's master's program that's the students who are watching this? Is that does that get reviewed, or is it our department, like the leadership higher and adult ed? Like to what level, like how narrow is the specific review, or is it more of a comprehensive departmental review?
It's more usually in OISE's case, it's comprehensive. So it's all of our programs within one single department are reviewed on the same cycle, and it's really comprehensive. It's really comprehensive. Everything is looked at, and everybody is invited to participate. So you'll discuss. Yeah.
And so also another question with this is like, if OISE is that huge, do you must have a review going on all the time? Or are they all on the same 8-year cycle?
Yeah, at OISE, they're all on the same year cycle. That happened, I think, about a decade ago when there was a new dean who came to OISE, and there was actually the policy, the quality assurance process at the university institute. It was new at the time, so it was decided at that time. And OISE was also undergoing a sort of an organizational change, if you will, like departmental restructuring, and it was decided that all programs would be sort of bundled under that new departmental structure and reviewed that year. So, and then from that point on, we just kind of follow that schedule, and all programs at OISE, by and large, are reviewed on the same cycle in the same year.
Every 8 years. That's amazing. So why do these self-studies work? Because I've had students actually who have done their undergraduate education or have worked in other countries say, you can't just have people study themselves. That creates nepotism, where I'm going to hire my cousin, or I'll just sort of lie to say that we're doing well. Why does that work in the Ontario system?
Yeah. So it's so as I mentioned, it's the process. This whole process is based on the self-evaluation. So let's say we are to compare this to learning. So those who engage in self-study have the opportunity to enhance their learning experience and to improve their skills. So let's say academic leaders, faculty, and students who engage in a self-study process about the department and its programs, they have the opportunity to assess these programs themselves, to reflect on the program's content and structure, to identify some challenges for the programs and consider how these challenges could be addressed, and also to identify some aspirations and future directions for the program. So this all ultimately leads to enhancing the quality of the program. So this is a really a sort of the self-study process is the vehicle of continuous improvement, and it's really meant to be engaging. It's really meant to engage all those that are most directly involved in the programs, like faculty and students, to participate in this important process of like honest self-analysis of the program's strengths and weaknesses, and to consider whether and how these improvements can be made. So that's why we think that's how it works, because it's highly participatory, it's collaborative, it's involving external stakeholders as well. It just engages the goal is to engage the whole program community to be involved in their own quality assessment. So that's why.
So you've got faculty and then the students. Is that surveys or interviews? What do you do or do they write reports?
They participate in sort of consultations around the review process, in discussions, in conversations. It could be focus groups, it could be surveys, it could be part of the self-study writing team, and also any kind of public conversation within the community about the reviews, which ought to be reflected in the self-study. So that's why they work, provided that they are engaging and inclusive, like as they are meant to be.
Absolutely. And then who's an example of an external stakeholder?
And the example is the, let's say, alumni or for the professional programs, employers, employers, or let's say members of, like in case of OISE teacher education programs, could be members of school districts, school leaders, professional sort of regulating bodies and things like that. I just want to mention that important sort of aspect of the self-study is the self-study report itself. And this really becomes an important resource for external reviewers when they come for the site visit. But this product can also be an important resource for the department because it represents a complete picture of the program in a specific moment in time, and it can be really used for like other as a basis for other documents and reports like academic planning, or it can be based even for accreditation review in case of professional programs.
That is so cool. So this isn't just to try and to tell the government we're doing okay. I mean, this is our snapshot of time. This is what OISE was like in 2020, whatever it is, and how the students engaged, how our employers, alumni engaged, how faculty experienced it. Now, are staff in there as well? Because a lot of my students are academic staff.
Yes, yes. Staff are participating as one of the important sort of groups in the part of the academic programs community, but also in many cases they are supporting these kinds of processes. So
That is so cool.
They have a more active role.
Yeah, absolutely. So then what happens, if I may ask, when something negative is revealed in the review? So it's obviously in the document, but what steps are taken after that?
Okay. So yeah, because this is a sort of the quality assurance process is meant to be a vehicle for continuous improvement. It's not really often that something negative is revealed because people often try to address some of these challenges that they are aware of in anticipation of the review. So if something negative is raised that represents an issue, let's say, that can be corrected, and then it's brought to the attention of the commissioning officer for the review, which is the dean for departmental reviews of programs and units, and also the departmental leadership, which is the chair of the department and associate chairs. And then there is a conversation about how to address these issues. For example, one of the review reports that I've seen in my career brought up an issue of culture and climate in an academic unit where concerns regarding low morale and conflict were raised with the reviewers. So this is something that can be addressed by conversations with those directly involved, and also by some community building initiatives and by training and development and things like that. In one other case, many years ago, there was the reviewers found one of the programs quality to be undermined because there was a lack of faculty resources to teach in the program. So the program was found not to be sustainable. And so as a consequence, admissions to the programs were administratively suspended after the review. And later the program formally closed. So that can also happen, but it is rare. But most review recommendations are really aimed in continuous quality improvement, and they're addressing issues that are identified through the process of academic change, which entails like minor or major program modifications, like changes to the curriculum of the program, changes to the program requirements, changes to admissions requirements, renaming the program to better align with trends in the disciplines and things like that.
That is so interesting to me because actually my first year at OISE as an undergrad student was the year that program was suspended. And I have very vivid memories of meetings with the dean, these sort of town hall meetings for students saying, what do we do about this? And so I don't think I realized that's actually very, very rare because I assume that this is sort of the process is we find a program each time and something happens, but that's actually not the norm. The norm is these small program changes that can say support students in their writing or help them decrease their time to completion or make sure they get more time with faculty. So these are actually again, you talked about quality enhancement. It's almost like it builds on those small things we're already doing to formally document them and say, look where we're going and what we continue to need to work on. I think though, as well, I think a lot of my students, because they are working frontline in administrative positions, will find it really hopeful that things like morale can get captured in a review, because those working condition elements that impact staff are really important and actually impact student experience as well. So it's really cool to hear that you guys actually are able to work on that. I'm impressed. So then what sort of big social events or other events impact sort of quality assurance the most from the outside? So we know what's happening inside OISE. We can tell that your office is really working with departments to make sure that these reviews happen, to make sure that everything is captured from different stakeholders. But on the outside of the institution, what sort of social events or things are happening that are shaping quality assurance?
Yeah, so very good question. So I want to first highlight some of the sort of social factors and changes that sort of influence the emergence of quality assurance in higher education, such as the internationalization of higher education, including the emergence of new providers, such as private institutions, in addition to public universities, the massification of higher education, the migration trends, increased mobility of students and faculty, increased focus on qualifications frameworks in many jurisdictions in many countries, and the employability of graduates. And then, of course, the increased interest in accountability. So then another factor that's really important, the expansion of the information and communication technologies, which we know has really transformed higher education, because it's really made connections between countries and universities more like instant, more smoother, and it's really increased these connections. And I think since then, I think the quality assurance has really become more universal and more prominent because of all these developments. And in more recent years, we have seen with the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen sort of an increased focus on sort of social change around issues of race, equity, and access. They are really having an impact on quality assurance efforts. And in a way, they are really increasing the importance of quality assurance. So let's say, for example, with the pandemic, quality assurance processes were not put on hold. They really continued, and they sort of transform, and they become more flexible. So during the pandemic, I think that the pandemic really normalized the remote participation of external reviewers in site visits, which was really rare before the pandemic, and it was not supported in principle. So now the focus on social justice issues instigated the introduction of principles of equity, diversity, and inclusivity within the review processes. For example, the extent to which the initiatives are being undertaken to embed Indigenous equity, diversity, and accessibility issues in curricula and pedagogy. This has become a really important term in the terms of reference for the reviews. And also now, more than before, I think efforts are being made to identify and invite the external reviewers from diverse backgrounds and experiences to participate in the reviews. And of course, the diversity of faculty and students is also increasingly considered during the reviews. And it's often happens that the review recommendations are made around those issues to increase the diversity of faculty, to increase the diversity of students, and what kind of activities are being made around that. And then also,
yeah, I just didn't realize, especially we're just coming out of, while we're filming, they don't know this, while we're filming this, it's coming right out after our day for truth and reconciliation. So I'm so excited to think that that's something that we're actually seeing woven through our reviews. So at a systemic level, they're actually trying to make these recommendations to broaden the institution. That's cool.
Yeah, I think it's really, that's connected really to the sort of social responsibility dimension of universities, and this and the quality assurance related to that really has a part in informing and articulating the core values to students, to the government, to the employers, and to the public. So these reviews, the cyclical reviews of programs and units, can really be used to articulate and examine efforts of universities regarding issues of access, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and really to call for and inspire some meaningful action around these issues.
Thank you so much. I think that's really exciting to see some of those social changes. And to think that this is a way from the top down, things can actually can trickle down. Because we always have these debates about where change can happen in institutions that have very strong historic pillars in sort of elitism. So in terms of the government, does the government take any role in ensuring quality? You had mentioned that they sort of require these reviews, but are they active in some way? Are they sending sort of reviewers to you, or do they have watchdogs of any sort? Like, how does the government get involved in quality assurance?
Yeah, so in Canada, but also in many other countries, universities receive authority to grant degrees from the provincial legislation, and under this authority, they are autonomous. Each university is autonomous in academic matters and determine their own quality assurance standards and processes. So the government really sort of governs the institution. It provides funding. It sets sort of an overarching provincial or national quality assurance framework and policies that institutions are required to implement, like the Ontario Quality Assurance Framework. But as I said, the universities have the autonomy. They run their own processes, they manage their own processes, and set their own sort of methodologies for these processes. So many universities also have like a government relations office, or they have a role that is responsible for government relations and for negotiating with the government and liaising with the governments. For example, each university in Ontario has a strategic mandate agreement that signs with the government. And these agreements are really key component of accountability framework for the post-secondary education system. And they include government sort of accountability and transparency objectives in relation to the institution's priorities and distinct strengths. So the government really considers these quality assurance initiatives and assessments carefully, for example, when deciding to approve new programs that the universities apply for. So let's say quality assessment is really in the form of an external appraisal. It's also part of a new program development and approval process, and new programs require ultimate approval of the government, and the government really can make these approvals contingent on quality assessments. So, and also this concept is really the quality assurance is a concept is really highly regarded and welcomed by policymakers and by high-level academic administrators within the universities, because the government is really increasingly interested in accountability, and this quality assurance really is a process that corresponds with it very much. So
that's interesting to me, because if we think of us reviewing our programs and that actually then feeding into expansion later. So if we want to add some sort of other faculty or another set of programs in a faculty, we need to actually have government approval for those large changes. And so I think that our quality assurance mechanisms actually benefit us and our students, but it also benefits our future and our expansion. I didn't know that. That's really interesting to me. Now, I've heard another term that floats around this. So there's quality assurance, but then there's accreditation. Can you help us to sort between those two concepts?
For sure. So this is a very good question for OISE, because we have a number of programs that undergo accreditation. So the quality assurance process is really about assessing and improving quality of all academic programs. And the accreditation for professional programs is really about regulated professions and regulatory compliance. That's how I like to distinguish them. So accreditation is really a form of quality assurance that is linked to, let's say in case of some of our programs, to educational system improvement. So let's say, and it could be said also that quality assurance is a prerequisite for accreditation. For example, the teaching profession is regulated by the Ontario College of Teachers, and that College of Teachers is really a regulatory body that accredits all teacher education programs in the province, ensuring that these programs meet the regulatory requirements, that they follow ethical and professional practice standards. So one of the requirements for accreditation of teacher education programs in Ontario is the commitment to continuous improvement and the quality assurance of the program, and measures demonstrating that commitment. So in a sense, that's what I mean when I say it can be a prerequisite for accreditation. So similarly to quality assurance reviews, this is also, the accreditation is also done on a cyclical basis, which is 7 to 8 years. So that's sort of a similarity, but it is a more specific, so it's more prescribed in terms of what is expected in the self-appraisal process for the accreditation. And I think that within the quality assurance process, the processes that the universities engage on a cyclical basis, I think there's more room for creativity. There is, these processes can be more aspirational, it can be more forward-looking and kind of more utilized for planning, while the accreditation is really more, I like to say, boxed in. And it's, if you will, and it's really checking for compliance, whether certain required elements are present or not present in the program. So that's the sort of key distinction
So that is such a helpful conversation for us to have had about this. We understand how it works for a really large faculty like OISE. I mean, we're the largest education faculty in Canada, are we not? I'm assuming we're close. Somewhere in Quebec might be beating us. But this is a massive operation. And then to think that you have a full office dedicated to helping us make sure that we do these quality assurance reviews, that we actually engage with all the stakeholders, and how this then sort of interfaces with something like accreditation, where the programs need to actually make sure they have certain outcomes. I did have one last question that's just reflecting on this. A lot of what we've talked about is actually program level student experience factors. Does quality assurance in any way tackle faculty output, like the publications, or is that an entirely separate concept?
It's part of the quality assessments, because we received the data on that.
Yeah.
That inform the cyclical reviews of programs and units. It's important. It's an important aspect of the reviews, but it's just one part of it.
And what's the like? What would be the breakdown between sort of things that are programmatic and affect students' experience, like their curriculum and their time to completion and their, collegiality and things like that? Or I shouldn't use it, but yeah. And what would be the breakdown of that compared to things like how much cutting edge research we do or how much expertise in the field we have?
Yeah, so the research, the quality of research, faculty research is important. One of the important terms of references that looked at, and usually the self-study has a section that's dedicated to
Oh, they
that.
do. Okay.
And
Yeah.
in terms of the like time to completion, and there's data on quality of students and data on students admissions, like application rates and
Yeah.
admissions and enrollments, and also time to completions. So
Yeah.
things like that.
So it's everything. The quality assurance
Yes,
review process looks at everything at the
yes,
institution.
things like that. Yeah.
Oh, so interesting. Well, Biljana, thank you so, so much for joining me today. I really enjoy having you in the class each year. It's been such a gift. And all the best as you keep OISE on track. And we'll look forward to having you again sometime.
Yeah. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. It was a pleasure.